Okay guys, so you can obviously see what we are gonna make. And the thing is, I want to give a huge shout out to CG Shortcuts. He actually made this in Cinema 4D, that is kinda the program where he teaches and what he does. And I was like, can we make this in Blender, or how can we make this in Blender? Okay, so this is essentially our Blender scene. And well, what you can see here, if you play this, you can see that it falls down. And when you go to 0, we have of course our camera view. So this is what you saw in the beginning. And what it essentially is, it is just a rope. Let me hide this for a second. It is essentially a rope, which is a soft body. And you can see that it really, it simulates like a rope. So it looks very nice. And then we have hairs on top. But the hairs don't really look like hairs. They are like little plastic or metallic little planes. I'm not really sure what to call these. But let's just jump into Blender and make this. So here's Blender, and I'm gonna make sure my screencast keys is on, so you guys don't miss a shortkey. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna delete this horrendous cube and get a curve in here. And the thing that I found is that, let me go back at our first scene again, that if you actually use a bevel, make sure it is long enough, because it needs to fall down, right? We need to simulate it. And I used a bevel like this before, but I have figured some stuff out, and it's the best to actually move this a little bit around. So let's move them both that they're on this axis. Then we're gonna scale this one up so it's the same size as that one. And now we're gonna move them both 1 unit more. You can see these units, right? So the height is essentially 2 units, and then it's 2 units wide. And here we have a nice beginning of our rope. So this is just a curve. Oh, let's make sure the z-axis is also good. Yeah, I just do that with scale z, like select everything and then scale z 0. That's just the way I do that. And if you want to give this a thickness, because now it's just a curve, then you go here into this section. It's the object data properties of the curve itself, and then you go to geometry. In the geometry you have a bevel, and you can actually change the depth, and you can see that we can we can just extrude like a circle out of it. And you can also change the resolution. I think 4 for this is quite good. And don't make it too big, this is already way big enough, okay? Like make it nice and small, because yeah, that's just how it is in real life. So I also want to move this resolution, like resolution preview, I want to move that up, because you can see that we have not enough resolution. You can see these little kinks in here. So I'm gonna just duplicate it by 3, so we have 36, and now this is nice and smooth. So this is a curve, and we cannot make a soft body out of a curve, so we have to actually go into object and go to convert to, and then we convert a mesh from a curve meta, or so do that, and now it is a real object. So now we can simulate this. So what we want to do is go to your physics properties and put on soft body. And what will happen if you play this, you can see that it just moves up and down and up and down. This is because the goal essentially has to do with, you have to put some vertex groups in here. If you want this everything to simulate as a soft body, then you always have to turn off the goal, and now it will just simulate as a soft body. But yeah, then it will just fall down, of course. And we want it to stick here on these both sides. So what we're gonna do is, we're actually gonna use the goal, and we need to make a vertex group. So I'm gonna go to edit mode and select this and this edge loop, and then go here into object data properties, and then we can go to vertex groups, click on the plus sign, and assign this to the group. So I'm just you can also rename this if you want, but I'm not gonna do that because we only are using one vertex group. And now we can go back to our physics properties and actually go in here, and you can see that the group is assigned. So what will happen right now is, you will see that it kind of sticks, it wants to stick there, but because of the properties that we have in here, it doesn't really. So if we go here to the strength and put this to 1, you will see a major difference. You will see that it will just keep hanging here. And that's just why this default should be set to 1. Otherwise it will fall down, as you saw. So That is one of the things that is very important to do. And the other thing is you can see that we have a lot of movement going on. Why is that? Well, you can change it in multiple ways, but I found the best way is to just put this mesh way down. So if you put the mesh to, let's say, 0.1 kilograms, then you will see a huge difference because it doesn't have that much weight on it, and then it will move in a more realistic way that we would see. You can see that it kinda can overlap inside each other here. If you don't want that, like, it's not that bad in this particular case, but if you do not want that, you can put self-collision on. There's one thing to be wary of with self-collision. If you put it on, it will expand, and this is because it doesn't want to collide with itself, so it's pushing it outwards. So if we put this damping and this ball size a bit lower, so let's put them both at 0.1, you will see a huge difference. See, so now it stays way smaller and it will not collide with itself. So if we actually are gonna zoom in here, you can see that there is no collision, like it doesn't go through each other. So that is one of the ways that you can do it. And you can even put these values a bit lower if you think it still looks weird, but I think it looks good right now. So this is how we create our rope. And now we want to bake this, okay? So you have the sketch file and you can bake this. I think a very handy thing to do is first save this, so save as, and then just do like tutorial or whatever. And when we have saved it, we can actually bake it. But I think that an important thing is that we don't make this bake too long, because it just takes a lot of time. So what about you look into your front view, play this and see when it kinda calms down a little bit. I think around a frame 100 or something, or maybe 120, but let's do 100. It will be good for our animation. And then also put this cache here at 100. So put it at the same as you put this one, like the timeline. And now you can bake it. So now that the bake is done, we can just slide in between here like very quick. And this is very nice because now we can just add our hairs on top. So let's go into your particle properties, just click on plus, and then we have a particle system. We want to put this to hair, and you can see that these hairs are huge. And yeah, let's just put this hair length to 1 for right now. And we don't want hair anyways, right? We actually want those little like planes there. So what we're gonna do is, let me make sure it's in the middle. Yes, mesh, plane, and I'm gonna scale it a bit down like this. And maybe a bit smaller. Something like this will be good. One thing to keep in mind is that if you're gonna use this mesh as your hairs, then it will be spawned from the origin. And our origin right now is where this orange dot is, and that is in the middle. We want it at like an end side. So what you can do is you can move it in your edit mode. That is an option. And you can also just change the origin, but in edit mode seems to go a little bit quicker. So let's do that. And when you go here into your hair settings, you can go to render and put it to object. Now we can select an object, which is gonna be this object. And here we have our planes, right? So I personally like to do the scale at 1. And why do I do that? If you put the hair length at 1 and the scale at 1, then it will be just like 1-on-1 size with this mesh that you have. So if we scale this mesh down, then we know exactly how big it's gonna be. So something like this, maybe a bit smaller. Something like this will be great. I personally do not like that it's that flat, so I like to add some extra edge loops in here. And then select the middle edge loop. Go into here, this is the proportional editing. And I like to move it up, so let me go to the side view. And I'm gonna G, Z. And if you scroll down or up, you can see how much the proportional editing is actually working. So I'm gonna make it huge, and then just move it a bit up. You can see that we also move it out of our origin. So make sure you select everything and just move it back to where the origin is. Great. And yeah, now it's like a little bit curved, which I feel like it's way more realistic. And let's go back here. And I know this is handmade, and with handmade stuff, a lot of times it's a little bit less less random. But because it's like so fragile, and all this stuff, all these things can quite move easily because it's kind of a paper. I would still like to add some differences in here. So if you go here to advanced, we can actually change some stuff. We can do the rotation, and if you put this face up and this randomized face, then we can have some rotation in this scene. So I like to put this face at 0.7, and we already see a little bit of rotation, and then randomize face, so it's all random at 1.4, something like that. So it's all a little bit more random. Yeah, I just like it a little bit more like that. You can choose whatever you want. You can play around with these values, like nothing is set in stone. And the next thing that we want to do is, I also like to add a little bit of scale randomness. Don't do it too much, but I feel like it makes it really more realistic. So, in my opinion, these are not enough of these hairs. So what I want to do is I want to bump this number, like in emission, the number up. So let's do 5,000 for now. That looks way better, but I think we should scale this one a little bit down. Here, yeah. Remember, we can always put this up or down whenever we want, right? Make sure you do it before the bake, but that's totally fine. So if we play this, let's go to our front view. We can see that it moves quite fun, right? But there is one thing that I do not really like is everything moves according to the soft body that we have, which looks awesome. And it already looks realistic, but to make it even more realistic, we're gonna also do some hair dynamics. And hair dynamics essentially, yeah, they simulate the hairs themselves. And if you play it right now, it's gonna be a bit too much, and you will see it when it goes down. It takes a little while because it needs to calculate. But you can see that, yeah, look how much everything moves down. And that is how hairs would work, but not really how these tinsels will work, right? So what we want to do is we want to change some of these settings, and I like to go to the structure, put the stiffness a bit up, like 0.7, and this will make them more stiff. And I feel like the mass would also change a lot. So if you put the mass to 0.1, then they would also move less, just like the rope did in the beginning. So if we simulate it right now, we can see that they move and they look way more realistic, but it's not too much, right? So, awesome. Let's keep it like that. And what we're gonna do is we want to bake this as well. I always like to save before, so maybe save it as a second file or just save it like this. And yeah, because sometimes with bakes you just, the program crashes or whatever, and we don't want that, right? So now you can just bake it. This will take a little bit longer. And here's our bake. So, looks very cool, and it's time for us to give it some materials and stuff. So, I'm gonna go here, and go add a shader editor, and we're gonna select, of course, this little plane that we have here, and add a new material. It's just gonna be super simple. The base color is gonna be a golden-like color, maybe a little bit darker, like here. We're gonna put it all the way to metallic, and the roughness is gonna be 0.1. You can even put it like more to the 0. It will just be more reflective, which looks cool. That's kinda it. We're also gonna give this material, let's give it a name, gold, and let's also give this material to this, like the curve that we have. So gold, and that is all the materials that we need. Now I like to set up my camera as well. So if you click at 0, you know where your camera is. And yeah, this is not really the place that I wanted. You can move it like this. If you go into view and lock camera to view, you can move it like this. That is a great way to move it, but it is not really like specific, let's say. So if you want to be more precise with your, like the coordinates that you put it, you can go into item and put this location to 0. This one be 0. The y-axis doesn't really matter. Just the x-axis really matters, and then these rotations do matter. So put these at 0, 0. This rotation will be 90. So now you can move it down the z-axis, and now it's just like a straight view, like on top. So if we actually look at our materials right now, we can see that it looks kind of cool in the material view, but in the render view you can see that we lack a lot of lighting. You can render this in EV or cycles, by the way. I will showcase it in cycles, but it's kind of the same how you're gonna do it. So my device is gonna put the GPU, and the performance I will put the tiles to 256 and the other one also 256. This works better with GPU. If you have your CPU better, then keep it at lower rates, okay? So also here, if you rendered it, you can see that we have like really almost no lighting. The only lighting is this light in here, which I do not even want, so I'm gonna delete it. And you can see that it's very nice and black. Cool. That's not what we want. So what we're gonna do is, here in the shade editor, you can actually go to world, and we can add an environment texture, color goes into the color, and we can open our texture. You can get this texture like down in the description below, and I'm gonna choose the sculpture exhibition. And if you look right now in your render settings, you can see that we have added an HDRI, which gives us a lot of lighting. Is it enough? I don't feel like it's enough. We can put the strength a little bit higher, 1.5, but we can see that it's still quite dark in here, right? So let's keep it at 1 because it didn't really change a lot. We can even add some new lights in here. So Shift A, add a plane. Let me do it in this mode. I can move it over here, and this will be our key light. So you can just get a new material, give this a name, key light. And the thing that I want to do is delete this principal shader and just add a emission. So now this is gonna emit light. You can put the strength up to whatever you want. Let's put it to 10 for right now. And you can see that even with this light, we still have a lot of dark spots in here. This is mainly because the reflections, like look, you are looking inside a shadow, but it also reflects like the shadow of that one, and it just looks very dark. The light just can't get through to all those points. And you can change that in multiple ways. You can try to add like more lights and to more places. So maybe you have a nice rim light here. So most of the time we just duplicate this and then change the name, rim light. And a rim light most of the time is a little bit less, has less strength on it. And you can also have a backlight, which is a nice big light in the back here. But we already have an HDRI, so I feel like that is maybe a little bit unnecessary. And you can see that even that won't change a lot. But if you go into your render settings, you can go to light paths. And as Blender calculates bounces, just like in real life, a light ray bounces, and then you can choose the amount of bounces that it does, and then it bounces back to the camera, right? So what you want to do is you actually want to put this glossy up. So you will see it's 4 right now. But if we put this glossy at 12, you can see that it's way more bright. You can see that it just brightens up a lot, right? It's just because we have way more, like Blender has way more of those bounces to work with. So it will light up the scene a lot. And now, I think once you have done this, you can really look at where you want to place your planes and how much strength you want to give them. Maybe this emission should be even 20. Maybe this should be like 10. Maybe you can even go as crazy as putting a plane down here just to catch some more like light in our scene. And as you can see, this brightens up our scene a lot. And if you want to animate this, just as you saw in the beginning, then it's important to go into the output properties, add a new folder. So I'm just gonna add a new folder, animation 2. Then go in that folder and accept it. And now you can see that the output is changed to that folder. And what will happen is if you click here on render animation, or you can click on Ctrl F12, it will render the animation frame by frame. And what will essentially will happen, it will save it as a file format PNG, which is good. And what will end up in that folder, as you can see here, all the frames from 1 till 100 in our case, right, till 100 will be saved in this folder. And this is the best way to do this in singular like images. So why do we do it in a PNG file and not in a like a movie file or whatever? Because if you do it in a PNG file, we actually, like, if it crashes at around frame 56, then we can just go into Blender and render from 57 till 120. But if you have a movie file, if it let's say it crashes around here, then it will just corrupt the whole movie file and you just wasted a lot of time. So yeah, that's just how we do this. I hope you guys learn a lot. Like, subscribe, blah 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 blah. See you guys in the next part.